so hard, Amy, when I went. It was like 2 episodes ago that we published. It was recorded a couple months ago,
Love
and
hearing your.
in that episode, you're like, "Oh, have you ever heard of? Do you watch Modern Family?" I'm like, "No, I've never even heard of that." And like like a month and a half later, my sister was like, "You got to watch Modern Family," and I completely blanked out and forgot that you had said something about it. So I came back and like I think picked Modern Family one time because I had started watching it, and I don't like you didn't even say anything.
I don't even remember.
Like you didn't even call me out and be like, I told you about this like months ago, and you ignored me. And then I go back to edit this video from months ago. I'm like, oh, this is awkward.
It's totally fine. Do you like it though? How far are
Oh
you?
yeah.
Well, you liked enough to pick
Season
it.
yeah, season 7 or something. Yeah.
Okay.
It took a few episodes just to get into it, but yeah, it's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Clive. Those episodes are my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing
Jacob,
is
did you
really
watch
good.
Modern Family? Or did you?
I've heard. No, I don't watch a lot of TV, but I've heard good
You're
things
probably
about
better
it.
for it. You're probably better
Well, I
for
play
it.
video games instead, so
There you go.
Well, that involves thought.
yeah, a bit. It's my ADHD is like it needs that like fidgety aspect. So
Can't get away from it. Yeah. What kind of video games do you play?
I mainly play Overwatch. If
Okay.
y'all are familiar,
Heard of it. I don't know.
it's like a
Much about it.
first-person shooter, but it's like I never liked like Halo or COD because it's just like army guys with guns. But this is like the characters are really diverse. There's like tons of different styles of heroes that you can play. Um, some do have guns, but then some have like magic or other abilities that are just different.
Cool.
And Overwatch 2 is coming out in October, so I'm really excited for that.
Oh, I'll make this my pick, even though I've never played it before. I was trying to think of a pick.
Well, you're that desperate for a pick?
Well, I was just
You're like, I'll
thinking.
take anything.
I know I could contribute to the conversation here, but I could save it, or I could come up with something else.
Yeah, keep whatever you have for later.
Okay, well, I was going to share it. That's fine.
We've got a couple people joining us. Fearless is here on YouTube. Will Johnson is here on YouTube. Kelvin is here on YouTube as well. YouTube is dominating numbers right now. Somebody join. There's developer Cam, our MVP from Twitch. Welcome everyone. We'll officially get started in a minute. I'm super excited about today's conversation because we've got. It's the difference between the play around with Svelte stuff that mostly has been what I've done versus people actually using it for a real job, which I think is super exciting. Got several more people on YouTube. Christian, Mohammed, Flo, Pasindu. Welcome everyone. So yeah, general topic today is going to be SvelteKit, using it in real life on real projects. So as you have questions, feel free to add those into the chat, and we'll try to bring them up and have Jacob educate us on the amazing world that is Svelte. I recorded a video this morning, by the way.
What did you?
Yeah.
Well, nice. I've got to record one.
A YouTube video?
Yeah,
after getting called out.
Oh man, this guy's called me out multiple times. I appreciate it.
Oh,
I appreciate it.
So I posted a thing on Twitter about it was a little video of Amy and I in person together at Magnolia. And somebody was like, "Oh, is that the Amy who hasn't published a YouTube video in like a year?"
Is.
Yeah.
She disappeared.
I was like, "Yep."
James said, I found her. I found her.
I know. Kelvin says, "I love real world usage."
I need to go look at the YouTube policy though, because I'm not getting any AdSense revenue, even though it says my account's monetized and this is like the projected amount. But after 6 months, like after you don't post something for 6 months, I think that they like turn that off.
Also, you have to meet. I have no idea what you make. You have to meet $100 minimum before they pay out, I think.
Yeah, so it would like roll up to that amount and then pay out. So I get like $30 a month. I'm living big.
Sweet, that's
awesome. Anybody that wants to be a YouTuber,
yeah,
for $30 a month.
No, I feel like that's that's a big deal. I mean, I remember,
and I would still be getting $30 a month, but it like cut me off back in April, which would have been 6 months.
Oh, so I wonder if maybe you fell below the threshold. Maybe it does have.
my studio still says estimated amount for this month $30, but if I go back, it just goes 0,000 into my account.
No, I mean like so you have to get 4,000 watch hours in a year or whatever. So I wonder if in the last 365 days you
Oh.
haven't had. I have no idea if that's true.
That's a good
but
thought.
something to think about.
I will check that out.
Flo is asking, can Jacob give us a quick overview on the project he's using Svelte for? Yes, but I'm going to save that. Like that will be part of the conversation, absolutely. But I'm going to save that for the actual recording. Will is on both YouTube and Twitch, by the way. Shout out to Will. How was Magnolia? We were talking about this right before we went live. Amy and I had a blast. It was so much fun. It was absolutely fantastic. Hoping that that can get some extra visibility and stuff for next year and grow even bigger. But like being a relatively like a smaller one was really nice because we were able to like hang out and spend time with everyone that we wanted to and not have to like pick and choose where to spend time. Cool. Are y'all? I wonder if it ever freaks anybody out when I say y'all, especially international people. Like, are international people familiar enough with y'all to like?
I say y'all all the time.
Do you?
It's a great word.
I also I don't know why, but whenever I get in a Zoom, I always say howdy.
Oh,
like,
nice.
Everyone. I have no idea why. I'm not from the South. I'm
because you're a true
Midwest.
Southerner.
I have no idea why.
That's Texas. I don't feel like that's even South. That's like
yeah.
Texas.
I definitely. Not that I'm judging you for saying it, but it's not in my like typical.
Yeah, I have no idea where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
No clue.
Oh, cool. Flo is German. I'll actually be in Berlin, and I studied German for like 6 months on Duolingo, and I haven't done a long time. So,
how many spoken languages do you know? Are you familiar with? I wouldn't
put German in that category. English, Spanish, and then like I am
French.
Yeah, I've been doing French like on Duolingo for like 8 months. So, anyway, yeah. Are y'all good? You ready to kick it off? Sweet.
Let's do it.
All right, I'll kick it off again as we go through this. People, as you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat because we're here for it, and we love the interaction. That makes it a lot more fun for me personally when people have questions and stuff to answer. So, welcome everyone to another episode of Compressed FM, a podcast all about web development and design with a little bit of zest. In this episode, we are going to talk about real-world use cases of Svelte and also third-party JavaScript with our guest, Jacob Stordal, which we are super excited about. My name is James Q. Quick, and I am a full-time technical content creator.
Hello, my name is Amy Dutton, and I am the Director of Design at Zeal.
And we are joined by two amazing sponsors today in Hashnode and Daily.dev. Hashnode is my favorite place for developers to either start a blog or to copy their personal blog over to Hashnode to get some extra visibility. They've got tons of really great features built in to use Markdown to create content, and it really is just an awesome platform. So check out Hashnode, and we're also joined by Daily.dev, which is an extension that Amy and I both use every single day in our browser to keep up to date with the latest articles and content in the tech that we care about. So we use that every single day. So thank you to Hashnode and Daily.dev for sponsoring. And now, Jacob Stordal, welcome to the stream. So excited to have you. We've communicated on Twitter for, maybe a couple of years. I don't know how long about Svelte and other cool things. So we're super excited to have you. Welcome to the stream.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Stoked to be here.
Do you want to just kind of get into like your general intro, a little bit about your background and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I guess whenever people ask me how I got into tech, I like to back up quite a ways. I went to school here in St. Paul I got a bachelor's in digital media arts, which was really like half technical learning, half like artistic research. So we were learning, my focus when I joined originally was like graphic design. But instead of doing like comps for like a professional setting, like you would do practicing for a job, we were making art. Essentially, we would do art projects. And so we had a lot of collaboration with studio art. So I got into sculpture. And so the first time I wrote code was making kinetic sculptures with Arduinos and servers to like make these moving sculptures. And I would use like Raspberry Pis as like video players to embed like a screen inside of a sculpture and stuff like that. I was never really like, I never really thought I could be a programmer. Like I kind of like psyched myself out of like pursuing it professionally.
Wait, I
But learning,
I have to
yeah,
add, like, after doing all of that amazing stuff you just said, you questioned whether or not you could be a
well,
developer?
so that was before, and then I got to this
Okay.
program and was like,
Okay.
oh, I can use code in this other way. Like it's
Yeah.
not just this like you don't have to just be this crazy smart science math person to write code. Like I can make these silly art projects and learn about code
Yes.
that way as well. So I got super into it, and I had always been online. Like I was kind of raised by the internet, and so I took like a basic web design class at that program. We learned that was right after CSS3 came out, so we learned HTML, CSS3, Bootstrap, and really just learned about the DOM. And I kind of think like that was, I kind of have like, I call myself self-taught, but that course was like a huge foundation for me, understanding the DOM, understanding how the browser works, understanding how the DOM tree works and how rendering works in the browser. But I tried, after that, I tried to learn JavaScript and it just didn't work. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know how to break problems down into logic. And frankly, my teacher at the time was not very good at teaching that part. He like knew the syntax. And I was like, okay, I understand what a variable is. I understand what a function is, but like, how do I make something and break that thing down into logical steps, right? And so I just kind of like left it. I was like, I can't do this. Obviously, it's not clicking. I don't understand it. And so in all that sculpture work, I got really into welding as well. I loved building stuff with metal, and welding was really fun. And so that's what I pursued right out of college, and I went into that full time. I worked at a sign shop doing like neon signs and sculpture for them out in Seattle, and worked doing that a couple years. And what really led me back to tech was in that job as a welder, I got really, really good at collaborative problem solving with other people and like across teams. So like a neon sign shop like I worked in has tons of different teams from different disciplines. You have painters, you have electricians, you have installers. And so it's lots of cross-team collaboration, like when you build software. And so I just got really, really good at that. And then the pandemic hit, and I was kind of like, oh, what do I do? And so that's when I really leaned into teaching myself JavaScript properly. I like picked up some freelance WordPress stuff because I could mostly get by with my HTML and CSS knowledge doing that. But yeah, then I just kept at it, building stuff, watching James's videos, building stuff on GitHub. Yeah, now I'm a full-time software engineer.
Love. So I like people listening to the audio after the fact won't have seen my facial reaction to the stuff that you were talking about, but you were talking about combining tech and programming in this like totally artistic and like different, creative, unique way by using Raspberry Pis and embedding them into things. One cool thing that I did, which doesn't sound as nice as the stuff you did, is I did a Raspberry Pi and like built out an arcade cabinet, like cut the wood and everything, and did the buttons and wired it all together. The only time I've ever done anything like that before, and built that for my nephews. Anyway, I just want to like start by saying what a cool way to emphasize that tech can be used and programming can be used in infinite amount of ways. And I think that's something people often overlook, is like, you don't, not that there's anything wrong with writing code for a bank, but if you have like a particular interest, you can go and write code for that particular interest and like have excitement for not just the code, but also the product and the company, et cetera. You don't necessarily have to, but you could. There's lots of ways to apply the skills that we learn and talk about every day.
Yeah, and especially that's what I tell people. Reach out to me on Twitter that are trying to also be self-taught. They're trying to teach themselves, and that's like the key thing is you gotta want to do the thing. Don't just follow a tutorial and build it following along. Like try to twist it and like think of something you actually would use or you actually would have a fun time building yourself. That's what I did, and that really. That really helped me learn like how I like to write JavaScript and how I like to build projects. And yeah, that's also how I got into Svelte. I don't know if we want to jump into that just yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna do one like semi ranty thing, and I think Amy, you were gonna jump into, so I apologize. I'm gonna do one quick one.
Fine.
So I just published a video on like 5 pieces of advice to become a more successful developer, and they're less about the technical stuff. They're more about like complementary skills. And one of the things I said was like, you should be excited and passionate about the thing that you're working on, because it's going to make it easier for you to want to become a better developer. And I made sure to clarify, like, I don't mean this from the perspective of a hiring company that's like, okay, you're passionate about it, now you're going to work 80 hours a week. That's not what I mean. I mean, you should be excited about it. And someone commented about like, I don't need to be passionate. I don't need to be excited. Like, what drives me is wanting to be a better developer, and basically kind of telling me that I was wrong for saying that you should have passion and excitement. And my response to him was like,
It's like, didn't he just confirm what you said?
if
I'm
you
passionate
want-
about being a web developer. Well,
if
that's
you want to
passionate.
be a better developer, like we can avoid semantics or we can get into them, but you're passionate / excited about the thing that you're doing. Like, if you're driven enough to have a goal of wanting to get better, you're excited about that thing. I'm sorry to break it down for you that way, but that's exactly like, you just, people that don't enjoy what they're doing don't put extra time into the thing that they're doing. They don't care. They go to work and they do their job and they go home. So anyway, I love the being able to tie that into stuff that you're actually excited about and stuff that you actually care about.
Or they do it, but you're watching the clock the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, time just it takes forever. I mean, what a miserable existence.
Absolutely.
Oh man. You know what's interesting is I've been reading a book called Grit, and it talks about, so grit is like the thing that makes you keep going, that you keep putting in the effort. And so I've wondered how many times people quit on learning programming because they don't have the grit. But in the same breath, you have to choose what you're going to be gritty about. So I can't be gritty about everything because something does have to give. But I think that also plays in like a factor in all of this. And she makes the case that in order to find what you're passionate about, you do have to experiment and try different things. And she even makes the case, which I thought was interesting, that you can't just like read about things. You have to experience them to really figure out what you're going to be passionate about. I'm getting a big head nods from James.
I wish my facial expressions came through on the podcast for people on the stream. They can see, but I love it. Yeah.
But the act of doing is what's going to get you passionate too. And for a lot of people, they didn't find their passion until after they experimented. And a lot of the stuff that she says is geared towards like high school students. When you're telling them, well, pick a career, pick a major with what you're passionate about. She's like, people on average change their majors multiple times. And that's part of the reason why they need experience. And so one of the best things in this case that a university can give you is just various options to be able to experiment.
Amy, what's the title of or do you mind grabbing a link to
I'll share
the book?
And I'll also share, she was on a podcast with Kate, is the girl's first name. She has a podcast called Everything Happens. And it's fascinating. I should save this for my plug. It's like better than the plug I'm gonna plug.
Keep it.
Or pick. But she has a podcast called Everything Happens. And what happened was she was diagnosed. She's young. She's like in her 30s. She was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so she just got if you look at the title of her podcast, it's Everything Happens for a Reason. And she crossed out for the reason. She's just got sick of people saying like everything happens for a reason. She's like, you don't know my situation. Like, what did I do to deserve this? It's just everything happens to people. Like, stuff happens. And so then she interviews all these people on her podcast about like these huge life things. It's so good. So, and it's really well done. It's actually done by Duke University. So anyways, we can transition onto things that Jacob is passionate and gritty about.
Like Svelte. And Jacob, I'm going to kind of guide you into this because it's something you mentioned that I'm so excited for you to talk about coming into us recording, was the idea of JavaScript not really resonating with you initially, and Svelte being the thing that helped solidify that, which is such a cool story. So how and why did you get into Svelte? And then why did that click more for you? Why did that help you understand just JavaScript as a whole?
I was working as a welder still, and I was like feeling like I was in a dead end job. I was like, I need to be making more. We really wanted to like buy a house and all, just kind of be financially stable. So I was like, I'm gonna try this again. If I can get into tech, if I can learn JavaScript, I can do that. I can restart my career essentially. And so what I did initially was, I saw someone mention in the chat the Cold Steel Web Development Bootcamp. I did that. It was awesome.
yes.
Highly recommend.
Number one
Great,
resource in the world.
great content.
Yeah.
I think you definitely still have to build on top of it, but if you're coming from nothing, that's a great course. So I did that kind of at nights and weekends while I was a welder. And at the time, while I was working in the metal shop, I was listening to podcasts constantly. And so I was just like, oh, is there a web development podcast? I found the Syntax podcast. And I was just like, I'm just gonna fill my brain with this stuff because it's gonna stick. I'm just gonna fill all the empty pockets in my life with this new career I want, and it will stick eventually. And so Scott one time mentioned Svelte, and I was like, that sounds cool. They had talked about React. I had a friend who was working with React. I had looked at it. I was like, this is really confusing because I don't know JavaScript. But the thing I loved about Svelte, like I mentioned, I had taken that HTML and CSS class in college, and I really understood the DOM really well. I understood CSS really well. I understood layouts and how the document flow works. And so I just started building stuff with Svelte with no JavaScript. I was just using the component framework to just build HTML and CSS components to build like my little portfolio website. And then I could slowly introduce JavaScript as I learned stuff. And I could it's kind of like Sass. I always say you don't need to learn Sass completely. You can just start with variables and write vanilla CSS for everything else and slowly introduce these new concepts to yourself. And so Svelte kind of enabled me to do that with JavaScript as well. I picked up JavaScript or Svelte, early 2020, a couple months after V3 of Svelte was released in the fall of 2019. I've been around for a bit in the community. Picked up Sapper as well. It just really helped me formalize how to write declarative JavaScript, where I was struggling so much with writing imperative JavaScript, and so I needed to learn that declarative piece. And now I can write imperative JavaScript pretty well.
Is it ridiculous that I couldn't tell you what declarative versus imperative means? This goes back to I would recognize it, but I 100% couldn't tell you. If you explain it to me, I would understand. I couldn't tell you what that means right now at all.
Well, this goes back to a conversation we had earlier this week.
Yes,
where you were saying when you interview, a lot of times they'll ask you, what does this mean? What does this mean? And they're using all these vocabulary terms. And I don't know what the formal word of that is. I just call it this, or I can explain it. I know how it operates. Yeah. So it's the practicality versus the knowledge.
100%. I couldn't answer that question right now. It's such a cool idea though. People who actually do understand programming to start with Svelte and not necessarily leverage the JavaScript piece of that, because you still already get so many benefits, just the ability to have components. Now you're in such a better position than if you're in just regular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I've never thought about it before. I've never thought about separating out the benefits of a front-end framework and not using JavaScript, but it totally makes sense. And then to layer those pieces on, it's such a good idea. And this reminds me of, I was learning mobile development in college, specifically because I wanted to build something. And I wanted to build this Harry Potter trivia app that I've talked a lot on podcasts and things. And so I was going through the tutorial book and I was like, that's boring. And I just started building, and I would Google every piece of the way. I need to know how to do this, Google. I need to know how to do this, Google. And I was just building up. I mean, the code at the time, I'm sure it was still really bad, but it worked because I was able to learn the things along the way and not have to learn everything up front.
I'm going to highlight a message.
Is this okay?
From Coding with Chain. I'm always worried about asking these types of questions on interviews because a candidate may totally know what it means, but just not know what it's called. And I mean, that's what we were talking about, was the act of actually doing it or just knowing the vocabulary. At least when I'm conducting a code interview, I tell people that pretend like I'm pairing with you. Personally, I don't care if you know the content or not. What I want to know is, what do you do when you don't know what to do?
Mhm.
Like, what do you Google? What do you talk to me about? How do you talk through the problem? I would actually rather hear that than like, oh,
Mhm.
I know what I'm doing. And then you just start typing stuff. But James. Oh, all the we need like an emoji of
I
just your
know,
head
I know, or like one of those
bobbing up
gifts or
and down.
whatever. I've got so many like we're just talking to my soul right now. I left my dog outside. I'm gonna go
Oh,
let
go
her
get it.
inside. Amy, can you carry the conversation
Yes,
for
I can.
60 seconds? Thank
Yes,
you.
I can.
Mhm.
Actually, or we could sit here and like pause awkwardly. That would be hilarious. But anyways, I think it's just important that like in these code interviews, not to make people feel uncomfortable. I mean, that's not how you want them to feel in the job. And so when you're interviewing them, it should mimic the work that they're going to end up doing with you. So, and I want, if we do hire them, I want to be seen as an approachable person that they will ask me those questions to be able to get unstuck.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and maybe once James is back, we can talk about my current role, because that's one of the main reasons I joined Stylytics. Was the interview process was really, really casual, really friendly, really human, and
Well,
it
go ahead
was
and talk
just
about that process.
it
What
was
did it
just
look
really,
like?
really welcoming. So I was working my last job. I worked as like the web manager for like the biggest technical college in the Twin Cities. Um, and I was just kind of overqualified, way overworked, and really wanted to kind of get out of like, web and like webmaster type work into like a real product based company working on a product. And I was just browsing Twitter, as you do, and our VP of Tech, Jeremy, is the founding technology member of the company, replied to Svelte Society, "Hey, we're hiring Svelte developers. Can you retweet me?" And I just happened to see that. I messaged him and got an interview that week. Um, they Let's see. I started out, yeah, just talking with Jeremy, and then I talked with Jeremy and two team members, which was really, really cool. Just engineers on the front end team. And then I had a more formal interview with Jeremy again, and then the manager of that team. But there was no coding interview. There was no like technical challenge. This is why I always tell people, like, write open source, like get a GitHub, put projects in
Yes.
GitHub, because that's all they had to do to know, oh, this person knows Svelte. They just looked at my GitHub, which is full of Svelte projects. And so with some companies, especially startups, like they're trying to hire fast. They don't have time to do a coding interview or like drag it out for a whole month. So yeah, then I got an offer and have been there since. I started in like beginning of February, I believe, was my first day. Yeah, and it's been great. I really like working for a startup. Remote work is awesome. You'll never get me to commute again. It's pretty sweet. Yeah, I guess Stylytics, people probably haven't heard of it. I can give a brief overview of what the company is. So we build a content platform that allows e-commerce retailers to sell bundles of products. Usually it's outfits for apparel retailers. So, you go to an e-commerce website, you see a page for a t-shirt, a product detail page, or a PDP as we call it. And you scroll down below the product. The product I work on is a JavaScript widget that's a carousel of outfits that contain that product. So you want to buy this t-shirt, you can scroll down and get like outfit inspiration for maybe pants, shoes, a belt to pair with that shirt, for example. So yeah, it's been a really, really interesting experience. I've never worked on, so it is a third-party JavaScript application, which I guess if people have never really heard of that, our clients take our JavaScript in a script tag and embed it on their page. And then that script tag loads in JavaScript. It instantiates our widget. It fetches from our API and then displays the widget on the page. So learning about third-party JavaScript has been like put me into like hyperspeed learning about JavaScript, because I'm seeing my code run in all these different environments, tons of really strange places that people put this thing, and yeah, it's been a really, really cool learning experience in general.
And I'm gonna comment. So for people listening to the podcast after the fact, we'll have a link in the show notes for you to go and check out the website. For people that are here with us right now, just go to the link and check it out because it's a freaking beautiful site. Like that's one of the things I've learned about products and companies is if you don't have at the very least a really solid looking site, like people are, I judge negatively. And this is like, oh wow, this is something I definitely want to look into. And I feel like this just, as you scroll through and see all these animations and things that are wild, it just, there's got to be a lot of really cool dev work that goes behind the scenes of how all this stuff works. So I think that would be has to be a really exciting place to write this kind of code.
Yeah, I would agree. The other cool thing that I've learned a bunch from working at Stylytics is it's largely the majority of our engineering org is backend. So we have a whole backend system that we ingest products from our clients, and we have to write importers to import all that data. We have machine learning people who help kind of like auto generate outfits for then our styling team to come in and tweak things and publish outfits. And all of that stuff is written in Clojure. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Clojure. It's a Lisp. If you're familiar with a Lisp type programming language, it's built on top of the JVM. I know, James, you've written Java before.
Java virtual machine.
Did you say list or a Lisp?
Lisp. Yeah, with a P. It's an acronym. I don't remember what it stands for, but it's basically how the code gets executed is slightly different than like a normal script that's read top to bottom. So I've been exposed to Clojure now. Like the API that my product consumes is in Clojure. And in general, I find that people that write Clojure, they're very, very smart. Like it's kind of like the philosopher's programming language is what I've called it, because it's like people that like Clojure, they like it for a specific reason because of its like philosophy. It's like very, very terse. It's like you can be very concise and write really powerful services. And so just being exposed to that stuff, mainly being a JavaScript developer, has been really, really cool, and getting to kind of be thrown into this environment, this machine that's already running, and just getting into how can I contribute and improve this org in my specific, with my skill set, in ways that are maybe outside of my job description as it was originally defined, or just trying to find a need and fill it in the org in general has been really, really cool.
How do you know how the decision came about from the beginning for the company to use Svelte? Like this is where the big gap is, I think, with like, I'm just a guy doing YouTube videos, right? Where I can try out stuff anytime I want. I can go and rebuild my site into Astro on a random week, like I did a few weeks ago. Like I have that flexibility. Companies don't have that luxury, right? Like if they're making a bet on something, it should be like, it should be in a good spot. They should be able to hire people with those skills. So do you have any idea like what sort of thought process went into like embracing Svelte as the framework, or whatever people call it, that they wanted to use to going forward?
Yeah, so I think originally the widget part, the actual front end piece of our product, was built. So V2, which we still support, we don't add features to it, but that was like written by and built by an outside agency. They just built it for us. And so this widget is our V3. And so this is Stylytics' first attempt at building it in-house, maintaining it in-house, and actually building a front-end team. So we're the smallest team in the engineering org. We're 4 people. And I think it was originally Jeremy, the VP of tech. We wanted to write declaratively with these in a component framework, because it's just a better development experience. And then we saw that Svelte is kind of the perfect choice when you're building a third-party JavaScript, because My boss Matt will always say that we are courteous and cautious guests on our clients' web pages. Like we're injecting content directly into their pages without their knowledge. And so that's like a really big responsibility that we have, to not hanker their performance, not drag their lighthouse scores down, not affect accessibility. And so I think Svelte, in my opinion, is the perfect choice for that, because it is at this point the most performant framework, and it compiles down to just regular JavaScript, which our clients can then import via a script tag. So just like state management is a huge thing for us. Obviously, like we're displaying and positioning all these items in collages and fetching all these products from our API. And so being able to share that state really easily between components using context and stores and stuff like that. We've also recently gotten into using Svelte actions a lot more. Like we just implemented lazy loading for images via a Svelte action. I just think that it's like so tied to the platform of the web, but it has all the framework features, like just make the development experience incredible for us.
Very cool. We got a great question here, I think. A little bit less specific to SvelteKit maybe, but going back to you mentioning earlier, by the time you went to interview, you were able to lean on your experience in open source to kind of carry your weight technically. I don't know if that's the best way to put that, but to kind of bypass the need to gauge you technically, because you've got this this code that's already out there. So Pasindu is asking, how can we find some open source projects to contribute to? Some of them are so big, they're so complicated. So what did you have any specific like thought process in finding something that you could contribute to? Do you have any tips maybe for people that are looking for somewhere to get started?
Honestly, when I started, I wasn't really contributing to other people's projects. I, at the time, was working mainly as like a freelance agency developer. And so what I was building tooling that I could use in my everyday life. So I built this project called Steel. I haven't touched it in a few years just because I haven't had the time. You could probably find it on my GitHub still, but it was this sort of like meta framework for building headless e-commerce websites on the Jamstack. And so it came with a pre-built Sanity Studio. It came with what else? Oh yeah, a Snipcart integration for the shopping cart. And then the plan was to build multiple front ends. I started with Gatsby because it was what I was working at the time a lot. And so I wasn't contributing to anyone else's projects. I was just kind of making my own. And like making templates and starters is like a really, really good way to get used to even just like using Git, using GitHub, creating releases, like getting into the sort of nitty gritty of it. It's not, I was never focused on like building my own framework or anything like that. Even contributing to Svelte, like I've contributed to Svelte once and it was like an accessibility flag. But like even those little things like documentation, editing READMEs, offering to help with the changelog, all of those things are valuable. And at the end of the day, they're going to add green squares to your contribution graph. And yeah, I would just say, build what you want to use. That's always what I did. And yeah, it helped me a lot kind of learn the ins and outs of open source. Yeah.
We had a few people mention this in the chat, but Brian Douglas has actually been on the podcast. He was on episode 50 where he talks about his project called Open Sauced, where he tries to pair developers with open source projects that you can contribute to. And go back and listen to the episode if you get a chance. The thing that surprised me about that was he said it was a great learning opportunity. And I was like, how is a beginner supposed to contribute to this massive project? But he talked about a good maintainer is going to flag issues as first issues. Mm-hmm. And I remember asking him, what does that mean? And he said, well, a first issue would be something where you know what the answer is. You just don't necessarily have time to go in and write the code. Mm-hmm. And so you'll even put the solution in the ticket to say, this is what needs to happen. You just need somebody to go in and write it. Another resource is I would encourage anybody just to participate in Hacktoberfest. So it's getting ready to happen next month, but it's a great way to look for projects that are looking for contributions.
Love it.
Yeah, I guess one thing I'll plug now is, and James, you actually made a video about this. I just remembered. I have a project called SvelteKit snippets for VS Code.
Yeah.
So that I haven't touched it. It hasn't been updated. I'm not using VS Code anymore. So if you want a really good first like open source contribution, like go submit a PR to that repo on my GitHub to update it to the newest SvelteKit. Because VS Code snippets, it's just like you're writing JSON data. It's like pretty simple. So if anyone wants to do that, I'll review the PR ASAP and ship it for you. But yeah, that gets like, it's gotten like over 5,000 downloads now, I think, because of James's video. So if you want to have your code be in people's fingers, let me know.
We should clarify it has that many downloads because you built something really cool that just happened to have a video on it. I'll give an additional plug here as well. So I just made my personal repository, personal website. Now I'm doing embedded markdown with my own images and things with Astros. That's a new thing. I'm sure I've still got bugs in it. So I just recently released that. So you could do something on that. We also have the Learn, Build, Teach. We've got a bot for Discord. We also have the Learn, Build, Teach website that we haven't done much with. And most of that is just because of time. So if you're looking for other additional opportunities to do contributions for that, feel free to either join the Discord or send me a message or whatever. But yeah, lots of good places, I think, to make contributions.
And the compressed FM site is also open source, and there is a healthy backlog there. Some of those things I think have even been flagged for first issues, and I know I will be prepping that for Hacktoberfest. So,
which this episode will release
probably
after Hacktoberfest, unfortunately. But for people that are here
you
with
guys
us live,
had fun.
Yeah. Here's
like talking to the future in the past.
This is James and Amy from the future.
Oh, funny.
One of the things I'm curious about is something we all have to deal with. Amy and Amy really has had to deal with this a lot recently and working on the Everything Svelte course. It's just changes to use Svelte and SvelteKit. And so I'm kind of curious how, it's so much fun. How have you been handling that as a company? And what's any thoughts on that going forward with potential versions of SvelteKit? I imagine now that they're in release candidate for version 1, it'll be a while before there's a version 2, but how have you dealt with it so far? What are your thoughts on versioning in terms of how you're using it and where in your code going forward?
Yeah, so the main product is actually just Svelte. It's just a roll-up config to export a static JavaScript bundle as an IFI, an immediately invoked function expression. So it's just a single JavaScript file that we get the whole widget compiled down to. But we do use SvelteKit in a few other places we have a big mono repo. One is when I first joined, we didn't really have like a great onboarding experience because the front end team's so new, they're just, working on bugs and features and client requests and all that. And so what one of my colleagues and my boss kind of thought of as a way for me to learn about the product without them having to like spend a bunch of time onboarding me was I rebuilt our external documentation in SvelteKit because it was previously just like a standard single page app with Svelte. And so like in rebuilding that, I learned a lot about the product, and now we have like a really fast server-side rendered, proper routed site that our clients can use for documentation. And so, yeah, we use SvelteKit there. And then just recently, I am collaborating with the design org to formalize the design system using SvelteKit and its package functionality. So yeah, I had to deal with those breaking changes recently. I think that, I fully support like Rich and the team and their decisions. I was skeptical at first, but I didn't express that. I took my time. I read through the whole GitHub discussion. I created a branch and did the migration. It was pretty painless, honestly. I still had to do, I had to modify like 18 or 20 files, but it was like one-line changes. And I think that, there has always been a disclaimer. SvelteKit is beta software. You are co-signing that this is okay. And I think it will be better. I think that this ultimately, I think their assumptions about file-based routing, how we were handling it before, they're when you get to a big app, like our Docs now is a pretty big app. And it will get bigger because we're redesigning it and adding like authentication and all that stuff. I think that it will definitely be worth it. And already I think it's I love smaller files. I would rather have like a couple smaller files than one big file. So breaking things out into like the .server file pattern, I guess, has been, it was hard to get used to, but I like it now. I think that it's great. And yeah, having a release candidate, I assumed they would do a release candidate at Svelte Summit. So I'm glad that it's here. Hopefully there's nothing major. But even still, like form actions just came out. And like, I think that it's really, really cool that they're taking their time to make sure that this framework is like the best possible platform for people to build like big applications with Svelte. I think that it's, especially when you think about like a big enterprise like us, we probably, if SvelteKit wasn't around, would pick like Next.js or something like that. And I think that these changes really, really make SvelteKit a true contender against those other frameworks.
I definitely share in the initial kind of shock, I guess, of the change in the API. Amy and I chatted about this a couple of days ago as well. Again, in person. So cool to refer back to that. And I think it's one of those things that if you let yourself give it a chance, you'll get used to it and probably start to appreciate it. If you keep that initial reaction that a lot of us do, like it's hard to fight that initial reaction of like, this is the way things have been and that's the way I liked it. But if you let yourself move past it, I think it is. I think there are benefits going forward for organization and clarity and things inside of your file structure, and that's super exciting. I don't know much about the form actions piece. Amy, you mentioned this. I think this is more of kind of a remix type model where you're doing more of the traditional form submissions, which is not what we were doing in the course, by the way. So I don't think we have to change anything.
There's a little bit because it gives you a load function, which I think Remix does as well. So when you're passing in parameters through a URL, you have to use that load function to be able to pass that on to the page component itself. So that's really the only place that it's being used in our app.
Okay.
What's interesting, so for people that don't have experience with SvelteKit or haven't dug too deep into the changes, before I would have a components directory, or even when I've been working with Next.js, I'd have like a modules directory. And we were talking about the compressed project earlier. If you want to see an example, that's a prime example where there'll be a modules directory and it almost mirrors the page structure. So you have a page for, say, episodes, and then there's a modules folder, and inside there's an episodes folder, and all the components for the episodes page is in that directory. So you're almost like mirroring your app in two different places, or the structure of it. And so trying to maintain it and to go two different places for something that's appearing on the same page can sometimes be confusing for people that are coming in or just trying to keep track of everything. And so with this folder-based routing system, what that does is, because it's relying on the name of the folder, you can actually dump all that page's components into that folder that's controlling the route. And so in SvelteKit, there's also a plus page.svelte and a plus layout.svelte. And because you have that plus on the front, those files are at the top of that file list, which makes it really nice to be able to access it. So the
I didn't
thing
think
that
about that. Yeah.
the thing that I like about it is it keeps everything all together. And so it just feels really clean when you get ready to go in and modify something, you know exactly where it is.
Love that. Was just going back behind the scenes and trying to grab some links for us to include.
I was going to say, I looked down in the chat and I just saw Amy and I should do that stream. And I was like, what did we just commit to?
Yeah, Avnish suggested that we just have like a stream where we just go through and do as
Tiny
many
issues
of
and setting stuff up. That'd be fun. That would be fun.
I'm copying. Sorry, 1 second. I'm copying the extension link into our notes to include the SvelteKit extension into our links to include for later on. Maybe one. So we're getting close to wrapping up. Maybe one additional question for you. It's kind of funny thinking about the updates to SvelteKit, thinking about other frameworks like Next.js and them going through new iterations of their structure and Remix and Astro, and there's all these really cool frameworks. And one of the things that I like argue is that there's usually not as much innovation in the industry, and honestly in any industry. It's more about like continuing to build off of each other and like take the best pieces of different frameworks. Anyway, I'm just kind of curious, are there any other frameworks that you're excited about, that you are interested in, that you have gotten to check out, that maybe you haven't gotten to spend time with, that you would like to? Anything else that you're interested in?
Not really at the moment. I haven't honestly played with Remix. I really want to. I mentioned it to a friend who's like big into React, and she really liked it. Mostly I'm trying to build, I have like a bunch of side projects that I'm working on that are consuming my nights and weekends. I have so many unfinished side projects.
We all do.
I guess
just like everyone else in the world.
Yeah, right. Well, so yeah, recently I switched from VS Code to NeoVim, which has been really, really great.
I was going to ask you that. Talk about that really quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to use Vim, like mainly for me. Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier. I have ADHD, and so like context switching is a really huge distraction for me. And honestly, like for me, VS Code is just a little too slow. And so I just wanted to have it's just browser, terminal, Slack, and that's all I have open all the time. They're always in the same spot. I can one key press away from each of them. And I work so much faster this way. It's taken some time, obviously, to learn Vim and like set up my own key mappings and all that stuff. So a side project I'm working on now is like a kind of, you can just git clone this NeoVim config and have like all these plugins already set up and installed, and a nice color theme and all that. So yeah, I've kind of been obsessed. You can be so fast when you don't have to touch your mouse. And when I first heard that, I was like, I don't really believe that. But now that I'm doing it, it's like, I can feel it. Like you just feel so fast. It's really, really cool. And NeoVim specifically, like Vim. If you ever use regular Vim, writing Vim script is horrible. It's like it's like dragging your nails on a chalkboard. And so NeoVim has Lua embedded into it, which Lua is like a really cool scripting language. And so this whole config is written in Lua. It's been a really cool language to play with. It's really JavaScript-like, so it's really easy to write even if you don't know it. So yeah, I've been working on that. And then I guess one last thing I'll talk about it's still private on my GitHub, but I'm hoping to publish it soon, is I'm making this tool. It's a template repo that you can use to collect historical Lighthouse data on your products. So you basically have a config file. You can put in a bunch of URLs, and then GitHub Actions will have a cron job set up every midnight, UTC midnight time, to go run Lighthouse via the Lighthouse CI package, collect that JSON data, parse the JSON data, and then store that JSON file in your GitHub repo. So you can, like, over time, we've done this at Stylytics now, where we're running perf tests on our products every single day to kind of track historical progress, hopefully getting more and more performant. But I wanted to just kind of break that out as like its own template that you could just copy to your GitHub and put in your URLs and start collecting that data. So yeah, hopefully I can finish up that this weekend, and I'll tweet about it, I'm sure.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to that. There was actually a question. So I've got one question in the chat that I want to ask. And before that, I forgot about one earlier. And somebody asked a question about databases and SvelteKit. And they mentioned PlanetScale. So PlanetScale can work with any framework that you want to. PlanetScale also added where you don't have to make you can make a connection to the database through HTTP, which now enables you to make connections through serverless functions, which is really nice. I'm curious, are there any specific databases that you've used with SvelteKit that you're a fan of, or something that you use at work?
Not really. I mainly use Sanity. I think if you go on Sanity's site, I've written a lot about Svelte and Sanity. And yeah, I think we're using that at Stylytics as well. Like our docs is powered by Sanity, which has been really, really nice. But most of my database, because I'm a front end person primarily, so I've been teaching myself Golang on the weekends, and so I spun on my first ever Postgres database with the Go ORM. But yeah, I really don't really touch. I don't even know SQL, to be honest. Like I'm not big into databases, but I really like Sanity for I probably use it for stuff that I just use it because I know it and it's fast and I can spin it up in a second. So yeah,
that's what matters.
If you're building anything that has content where non-technical people have to edit it, I highly recommend Sanity because you can really, I come from WordPress where you can't really do much to the backend interface to make it better for your admins. But Sanity is kind of the complete opposite where you can completely transform it into exactly what your team needs. And it works really well with SvelteKit. So
cool. Love that. We got a question from Kelvin. Does SvelteKit have an ORM or do you bring your own? And Amy responded, so you bring your own. And I was going to comment that we are both big fans of Prisma. Prisma works great inside of SvelteKit as well. I actually have a talk that I gave over the summer that shows using Prisma and SvelteKit and a few other things. And then one last question before we start to wrap up. A question from RJ. Are there any specific projects like React Query for Svelte for state management of data? I think the short answer is probably just embedded stores that come with Svelte. Is that what you use for state management?
Yeah, we use stores and we actually use context a lot. I think, but the stores they're so powerful and so simple at the same time. I really, really like using them a lot. Like in the docs site, we have a page that's like a widget demo that basically you can kind of see all the different widget variants that we have. And the configuration is like a JavaScript object. And so we keep that in a store. And so by doing that, we can pop out like a little code editor. So you can like live edit the config in the browser. And because of Svelte Store's reactivity, it just it works so smoothly. You can like literally edit the state of your application from the browser, and it just it all keeps up. It stays really snappy. For GraphQL stuff, Scott Tolinsky has jQuery, I think it's called. He's working on with GraphQL, and if you're using TypeScript, something like that could be helpful. But again, that's just using Svelte stores under the hood for the actual state management. But yeah, I think stores in general are great.
Cool. Love that. Sweet. I think that is the end of kind of the regular portion of the show. And we're going to move into, I don't know what the regular portion, I guess. I don't know, the main portion. Anyway, we're going to move into our picks and plugs section where we pick something that we've used or seen or listened to or something that we enjoy recently. And then a plug, which is something that we just kind of want to not so humbly brag about that we've created or something. So anyway, Jacob, do you have a pick and a plug that you want to share with us today?
Yeah. So yeah, me and James were talking about this. I was looking around my office. I've become obsessed with, I love colored light bulbs. I guess I'll show y'all. I got my coding setup is a little.
I was going to say, you said you worked at a neon shop, so that makes sense that you would like colored light.
Yeah. So this is when I'm coding, it's like nice red and blue. Sorry for podcast listeners, you can't see it, but I've become obsessed with Wi-Fi color changing light bulbs. I love the Philips Hue, but they're so expensive. They're like $40 a light bulb. It's crazy. And so I found Philips also makes this other brand of light bulb called the Wiz, and they're like $12 a bulb. So way, way more affordable. The colors aren't as bright. The light bulbs aren't as high quality. But they're cheap enough that you can, fill your house with them because, they're as much as a normal LED light bulb. And you can get them at Home Depot, which for me, there's a Home Depot right down the street. So it's super easy. They have all different sizes. They even have LED strips. So you can, connect all these different types of lights into one app, which is really, really cool. And you can automate things definitely within the app for certain times of day, certain lights will come on and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I've been loving those for quite a while. Yeah.
Super cool. That's the one downside to Hue bulbs is how expensive they are. I've got a couple and they are expensive. This is really cool. And then, do you have a plug? Something you want to brag about?
I guess follow me on Twitter. I'm at Stordal, Stordal. The other thing I'll plug is we don't have a job posting yet, but my team is hiring. If you like Svelte and you want to work with Svelte, if you're interested in third-party JavaScript and you're interested in e-commerce, working with some of the biggest e-commerce sites in the world, DM me on Twitter. I'll probably post a job posting on Twitter once we have one. But yeah, we're always looking for people that are passionate. If you have Svelte experience, send me your GitHub. Happy to chat with you.
Love that. Happy to share that in the Learn Build Teach Discord as well when that's ready. Very cool. Amy, do you have picks and plugs?
Oh yeah, this is the one that I was teasing at the pre-show. So the fun thing about this pick is I have never used it. But we were talking about video games before the show, and my husband plays a little bit sometimes, but he'll like get into a game and then finish it and then not play for months and then find another game and get into whatever. So, but one of the games that he got into is Detroit, and the subtitle is Become Human. And it is a fascinating game because it's all about kind of role playing, but the different decisions that you make send you on a different path. And so as you play out different scenarios, then it'll build out this tree in the game, and you can come back up the decision tree and make another decision and then see how that affects the game. So you get to see all the different ways that you can play the game, which is really interesting. The story is pretty good. So I didn't play the game, but I watched him play it, and I was always fascinated by different decisions that he made. So, for example, one of the scenarios that you have in the game is that you are like a hostage negotiator, and how you handle that situation, whether you go in like, give me the kid back, would affect what happens versus if you go in and you try and befriend them and have all these different conversations with them. So it's a fascinating game, but it's called Detroit Become Human. And cool. Oh, go ahead. Were you gonna say something, James?
I just said that sounds cool. I also love watching other people play video games. I feel like that's really underrated. My partner plays lots of like role playing games I would never play, but it's like watching a movie,
Yeah. And there are some, because you're doing this tree, you have to make certain decisions at the same time to get down into the like granular pieces, and so you'd hear these phrases over and over again. But it really is interesting and fascinating. And then for my plug, I'm going to this will be fun. I'm going to plug my YouTube channel, and the reason why I said this is going to be fun is because I've not posted in almost a year, which is embarrassing, but we have a new friend on Twitter that's been poking me to post. So check out my YouTube channel. I will post something. It is youtube.com/selfteachme.
Cool. I approve this message. I'm posting the link to YouTube in the chat. I've been behind the scenes grabbing links. Cool. So for my pick, Amy, you might be really interested in this. This is a struggle for me because it's the balance of liking nice things and also being really cheap. So keep that in mind. So this is a cold brew that you can order, and it comes in a box, and it is called Wandering Bear Coffee. You can
For a
find
second,
it.
I thought you were going to pick the cold brew that I picked a while back.
No, but that would be funny. Although you should send me that because I don't remember what it was, to be perfectly honest. That's the
Cometeer.
Okay, that's the benefit of us. This will be published as episode 99. So we've done that many episodes that it's hard to keep up with. But wanderingbearcoffee.com, and Jess found it somewhere and she ordered, and it comes in a box, and you just leave the box in your fridge, and you can order different flavors. They've got straight black, vanilla, caramel, mocha, hazelnut, decaf, dirty vanilla chai, and the pumpkin spice is sold out. We have the pumpkin spice and the straight black in the fridge right now. And they're kind of expensive. I think like per box, it's like $35. So like for two of them that we have is $70. And I think it comes out to be 16 glasses in each box. And depending on how you do it, you may get more or less or whatever. But it is really good. So it's my battle of like trying to enjoy stuff and like do kind of fancier things. But it's also a little bit hard for me to spend $70 on cold brew coffee, but it is a ton of fun. It's super convenient, and we've been enjoying it so far. So I think for the next month, I mentioned to her doing vanilla and hazelnut. So we'll do that.
Nice.
So anyway, wanderingbearcoffee.com. Gooseman says treat yourself. If people watch Parks and Rec, you might recognize that. Anyway, so that is my pick. And then my plug, I'll do a YouTube channel as well. So James Q Quick on YouTube, and I will specifically do a video that I just had a ton of fun with, and it gives you a little bit of insight. We've talked about the Compressed FM website today. And I want to link a specific video where I showed how to dynamically generate images with JavaScript, Next.js, and Cloudinary. And so what we do is pass in some information to a serverless function, like the guest name, the title, and their image URL, and then it uploads the image to Cloudinary. It overlays those things on top of a base image and automatically creates a promo graphic for our streams with guests, which I think is super cool. So anyway, I'll have a link to that video in the show notes, and then the channel in general. It's just James Q Quick on YouTube. All right, I'm going to pause-ish while I figure out what next week is.
You want me to tell you?
I just found it, but you wanna do it? You could do it.
You can say it because I'm gonna butcher his last name.
You just gotta say stuff and go with it. So in the
Josh
next,
Medisky.
oh, I wouldn't have said that. Awkward. And maybe it's that. I don't know. We'll have to ask Josh to clarify his name. But in the next live episode of Compress, we're going to talk to Josh Medeski. So that'll be up next week.
I think
Same
you're
time,
right.
same place. I'm probably.
I said double.
If we're being honest,
Desky. It's probably Desky.
it's probably, yeah. I mean, when people tell me I'm right, I'm like, usually you don't have to clarify that. But, anyway, we hope everyone enjoyed it. Jacob, thanks a ton for coming on the show. It's been a blast to talk to you after going back and forth on social media and Discord and stuff for so long. So thanks for coming on the show. Thanks everyone for the questions and the comments and the support. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch you next time. That's my YouTube outro. That's not, I'm supposed to say something different for what are we on a podcast? That's all we got. We'll edit that in somehow. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. We're still live, so we can get off in a second. Gavin Bowman, by the way, commented. Gavin was one of my teammates at Microsoft when I started my career, and I just got to see him in person at 2 conferences back to back a few months ago for the first time in like 6 years, which is really cool to connect with him. So anyway, Gavin, I hope you're doing well, man, and I'm sure I'll see you at other stuff soon.
Will he be at Render?
I don't know. Gavin, are you going to be at Render? You should absolutely be. There's no way you shouldn't be there. So I think so. Also, Amy and I will be in person again at Modern Front Ends Live in November in London.
Wow,
so we'll get to do another live episode of the podcast and meet a ton of other people. Like the speaker lineup is out of control for that, as well as Render. So
yes, and that conference.
And that conference, I forget about that. So Amy and I will do that conference. That's the name of the conference in January. And there'll be a special thing that I get to do personally at that conference that I don't know if I'm allowed to announce yet. So I'm going to keep that.
Is it what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think so. Assuming you're talking about the thing that I'm talking about in my head. Then yes.
I'm not going to say what I'm talking about.
I know, but Gooseman said, "What conference? That conference." You know,
we had those conversations.
Well, it's such a unique branding, but it also like can be very confusing when you talk about that conference. Is it generically that conference or specifically that conference? Nobody knows. Anyway,
this reminded me. So, I was trying to decide.
I was waiting on somebody to break the awkward silence.
I was trying to decide whether I should share this story or not. So actually this happened to my sister, not to me, but she got in a conversation in Spanish class in high school where somebody asked her what K meant. The Q-U-E. Not K, Q-U-E. And they said, what? Or what?
Oh, and then they were like,
K.
Oh, what does it mean?
It means what?
Yeah. It means what? It's like the who's on first.
Yeah.
We're full of these. We could go all day.
Come forever.
I don't remember if we were live when we said this or not, Amy, but Amy and I, like we've been pretty comfortable with each other, I think, for a while, but having a couple days in person at Magnolia JS, I feel like we're more
All bets are off.
comfortable, and we're just gonna get weirder and weirder. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, stick around. Not right now, like
If
stick
that's
around
your
with the podcast
thing.
in the future. Yeah. If you like weird awkwardness, then hang out with us
We
more in the
just
future.
embrace it.
We were talking about that on, we did a kind of a crossover thing with Taylor and his Guidance Counselor 2.0. And I was like, one thing you can do in meeting new people and going to conferences and stuff is just get comfortable with awkwardness and just embrace it. That like everyone has it. And I've mentioned an awkward moment that I had with Amy Knight that I really want to talk to her and ask her if like she remembers.
You should.
Yeah, but I want to do that like
brought
in
this
person.
story up a couple times.
I know.
Yeah, for sure.
But
well,
I
and
haven't
I
seen her
think
in
you should try
person.
and make it awkward. Like
No.
when you go up to ask her, just be like, "So,
gosh.
do you
There
do
was
I
this
make you awkward?
time-
Have I made you awkward in the past? Do you
Have I
remember the first
ever-
time we met?
Do you remember the time that it was very uncomfortable? But I feel like that could be like a leading thing
She'd
to
be like, "You mean this time?"
yeah. You mean like right now?
Oh man.
One day.
So actually, I don't know if you want to close on this, but I got to meet Taylor for the first time. He's a recruiter in Nashville.
Taylor
And one
Desson.
of the things, we should include his handle. He is a very cool recruiter, just in knowing his stuff and trying to get people connected. Does not feel sleazy at all. But one of the things that he did with me and James, which is what James is referencing, is that we peeled off, and in the lobby of the hotel room, he just flipped open his computer and was like, "Okay, we're live streaming, folks." And it was so neat that he just, flipped it open. A lot of times I feel like, well, I've got to get my camera right, got to get the lights, get everything in the right position. But just to flip open and have a raw conversation. A lot of times we talk about everything as content. So for him to turn this conversation that we're having into content, just hold on, we can go live and share it with everybody. And it was a great conversation. We had several people follow up with us on Twitter after the fact. And I think for me and James, at least, it was very eye-opening, like, oh, that's right. We create content, but it's that easy to create content and share it.
100%. I think we'll do that at the next couple of things we're at, in addition to the regular live episode of the podcast too. I forgot to, we should get off. Jacob, I forgot to ask you though beforehand if you actually had a hard cutoff, like you actually need to do regular work stuff and not just hang out with
we've been cutting down our meetings, which is great. We have like one formal meeting a week, and then I have like a touch base every 2 weeks, and that's pretty much it, which is super, super nice. And I'm
so you can podcast all day long.
yeah, let's keep it going.
On that note, though, I am going to go get lunch, because then I will have the Learn, Build, Teach Twitter space at an hour and 45 minutes on Twitter. If people want to join that,
I'll definitely be there. I did just deploy to production, which is probably not the best.
Sweet.
Friday.
Yellow.
I'm going to check Slack.
It is Friday.
I think no. Okay, no
I deployed.
So we're good.
Maybe I didn't deploy today. I deployed yesterday for the website. We broke the sponsoring page on the website, or probably me, to be quite honest. Somehow I removed the query to grab the information that's needed for that page at some point. And I was like,
get blame.
Yeah. I was like, here, I'll send the link to this cool company that's interested in sponsoring, which I'm super excited about. And I didn't send it to him. I went to grab the link and then realized that the page was broken, went and fixed it, and then sent them the link.
Oh, good.
Because I don't want to not get money.
Good call.
All right. Amy, do you have a meeting at 2 again? Or are you going to join us on the Twitter space?
I don't know yet. We'll find out. I'm trying to catch up on stuff. I was out of the office.
Why? You have... See, she makes fun of me for not having a job, but then she doesn't have all day to do all the fun stuff that I get to do. So.
Who said I wasn't doing fun stuff? Not me.
Are you? You said the stuff you have to get caught up on is fun?
Some of it, yeah.
But it's not, with me, fun stuff, though.
Oh, true. True that.
With other people, it's not as fun.
Quit doing Zeal.
Yeah, I mean,
and work with Eric. So
Gooseman
in the chat is one of my coworkers, and he's going to be on the podcast too, which I'm super excited about. So he live streams. He's an MVP for Microsoft, and he just gave a talk at ElixirConf.
I saw him he mentioned something about Elixir in the chat. Yeah. And by the way, my pause is not because I don't think Zeal would be an awesome place to work.
Fine.
It's because
it's giving up content full time.
Yeah. That.
Yeah. Well, I think agencies in general is like a very specific type of job you got to be in that. Like I did that for a while, and it was not for me.
Not for you. Yeah. I
It's-
think it
yeah,
can,
well, and it depends.
can have a ton of really good experience that comes with it.
Yeah.
I'll say this and I'll let James get lunch so he doesn't get hungry. The interesting thing compared to some of the other agencies, and the design team's a little bit different, but all the engineers are dedicated on a specific project. So a lot of the frustration that I know some people have with working at agencies is that constant context switching and having to maintain projects. So if you're an engineer, you're on that project. So you don't have to worry about that. You only have one thing that you have to focus on.
Yeah. That was my main thing, was like get assigned a project, get it done as fast as possible, and then move on to the next thing. And that's like why I wanted to get into a product, because it's like I can like really stay here and like make it perfect, right? Like after time. That sounds really cool.
Yeah. And not like take care of tech debt instead of like passing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Okay, sweet. Well, this has been fun. Hey, thanks to everybody for hanging out in the chat, especially us just like
goofing around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
See ya.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much for having me. Talk to you all later.
Thanks, Jacob.